All right, guys. I guess that's my cue to start here. No, it's been a really wild ride. I tell you what, started on a dirt bike at 4 years old. My dad had a construction company he had six brothers, all Golden Glove boxers, wrestlers, Division One sports. It wasn't the smartest family for sure, but they worked really hard. They all ended up going to college for football or wrestling or lacrosse. Maryland lacrosse was always our kind of our biggest sport. And my uncle Alan, who actually just passed away last week, known mostly in this area as Coach P. He was probably the best athlete that's come out of Maryland. Was my middle name is Alan, and he said, "Look, football is too dangerous." He got a lot of concussions, and he actually went on to teach a lot of physical therapy and taught at the community college for health. He went on to start a head first program. So this is even before all the concussion stuff. We really learned a lot about it. So I was very fortunate to understand, how to really get better, how to heal, and now with kind of the next generation, as you see the pictures here, my kids, my wife, everyone else that does Nitro Circus, our biggest thing is how can we have the most fun possible and do it in the safest way we possibly can. A lot of that was from my uncle Alan, who was very big proponent of, know your limits, but always push your limits, always challenge yourself, always see how far you can go. And, now this life that everyone thinks is really crazy, it was just kind of how we grew up. And, at 6'2", it's hard to believe, but I was kind of the runt of my family. I got beat up all the time. I was the least athletic, but I found out that I was really durable, and our whole family is pretty durable. And in action sports, durability is is something that's good, and so is kind of a mentality of, you're not a failure until you fail to get back up. And that was something that Evil Knievel said that really stuck with my father and stuck with me for sure. So, I guess if you look at these pictures, my wife Lindsay is two-time world champion skateboarding. My daughters are both in cheer. I always thought, man, I'm gonna teach them how to do all this action sports stuff and flips and tumbles, and as it turns out, that's exactly what they do for cheer. But I figure anything that they do that they're passionate about, like all you guys are, about sports. Obviously, if you're in the on track program, I don't know if you're like my family, but they didn't want to pull me out of school. They didn't want to pull me out. But at a certain point, I think about the third and fourth grade, we were traveling down to Florida every single week. And it was really tough for us to keep up with the curriculum that we had. And I was getting, honor roll, but still getting marked down to C's and D's because we would miss so many days, and our absentee days were actually affecting my grades. So I found that, starting in the fifth grade, we went homeschool so I could go to Florida. It used to be, I actually lived in a trailer park, Tall Pines RV Park, right outside of Brooksville, Florida. There's a track, or actually just an area called Croom, and we just rode sand whoops all day. And it was everyone from Ernesto Fonseca and Matt Walker, Shea Bentley, Robbie Skaggs, Robbie Horton, Ricky Carmichael, Kevin Wyndham, everybody. Probably names you guys, I don't know, a lot of the young guys probably don't know most of those names, but the top guys in the sport were all down there from, pretty much from Christmas till the end of February, and we all rode together. And now it's pretty cool because you still see in Florida, there's a lot of that camaraderie, and even a lot more camaraderie in the pro ranks, which is pretty neat to see these guys train together, not even on the same team. We see Ken Roxon and Cincerillo and all these guys riding together, pushing each other, and having fun, and realizing that at the end of the day, there's not a lot of people that make money doing their hobby. But if you can wake up every day and live your passion, ride that train till the wheels fall off. So I guess as you see the house right there, and there's a lot of toys. Kind of my goal growing up was to be like Guy Cooper, and I didn't want to be so much like him in that he never won a 250 or a main Supercross, and I never won won a real Supercross either. But we sure did have a lot of fun, and we led a lot of laps along the way. So we were kind of the entertaining guys, and at the end of the day, that's what I always wanted to be. Someone that went out there, gave it my all every time, always tried for the win, been able to make a living doing what I love for a very long time now. Yeah. So Supercross, that bottom picture is actually from St. Louis Supercross. So kind of interesting. I went into everything off-road. They say with age, get a cage. I had blown out my knee 3 years in a row, tore my ACL before the start of the season, got it fixed, tore my ACL again, didn't get it fixed, blew it out, and then blew out the other side. So, I mean, pretty much just a useless couple years. Then I broke my wrist, which is completely fused now. So I went into four-wheel stuff and I was just burnt out of being hurt. And talked to Charlie Mancuso, who was the president of Feld Motorsports, which was Live Nation at the time, which runs all the Supercross and Monster Jams. And I said, hey, can I borrow a monster truck? I think I can backflip it. And he said, sure, but if you crash it, you owe me a race. So that bottom picture is actually a track that Hubert Rowland and myself, along with the Dirt Works crew, we were actually able to go to St. Louis and build a track, which was pretty cool. You see that berm there? We just built a vertical wall. So there's an inside-outside line, like old school racing. Was pretty funny. But I did crash the monster truck, completely destroyed it. So I came back and raced St. Louis. And, one of the coolest things I learned along the way was really establishing friendships, establishing just that camaraderie. And, even right now, I went to Roger DeCoster and Ian Harris, who were at Suzuki, and now they're at KTM. And I got called out by Ryan Sipes to do a flat track here the start of next month. And I said, hey, Ian, can I get a motor? And he's like, yeah, Chris Fillmore, who I used to race in Supermoto, he's running the KTM flat track team. So I called up Chris and was able to get a full factory bike. Now I'm too old and too slow to ever have a factory bike, but when you establish these relationships and you don't burn bridges and you work your hardest to make sure that everybody that's spending $1 on getting you to the races, or everyone that's helping you out, even if it's a pair of gloves or a pair of pants or anything, my parents always had me write a handwritten note. And it's really funny because even Davey Coombs, who does Racer X and the Outdoor National Championship, he he said he kept a handwritten letter from me at 10 years old from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. He took a picture of me doing a nothing where I took off my hands and my feet going across the finish line at the RM Cup, and he put it in the magazine. And I wrote him a handwritten thank you letter. And he said Rita, his mom, had kept it, and he still got it. So it's pretty neat how far, in this day and age when, everyone's kind of, I know everyone's appreciative, but everything's just a text. Even a call means so much, but a letter every now and then to actually, put the postage stamp on there and send it. It really goes a long way. It's kind of like getting a Christmas card or something like that. And, your sponsors will remember that stuff. And when you can go out of your way to help the people that help you, that's what's really helped keep me in the sport. And to understand that even when you have a bad day, if, there's one kid or one person that's there that wants to see you, man, put on a smile, give him a high five, because that kid is going to, hopefully grow up to continue racing in the sport and continue, following and being a supporter of you, or, at the end of the day, might be the next Ken Roxon. So it's always good to, to try to leave as many positive impressions as you can. And at the end of the day, I got to build a track with my redneck friend, Hubert Rowland, and I got to race it. And it sucked and I crashed out, but it was a pretty cool experience nonetheless. So when you're following your dreams, one of the interesting things is it's hard to ever be great at something that you're not passionate about. If you're doing it for the money or you're doing it for the fame, those are kind of the redheaded stepchildren, if you will, of your passion and doing what you love and being successful at what you do. So for me, with all the injuries, I still loved racing. I loved competing, and I loved being a showman. And I learned how to put on a show, and that riding motorcycles and scooters and skateboards, it wasn't necessarily about being cool, at least not for me. It was about being surrounded by passionate people, getting a chance to do what you absolutely love to do, that drive that just gets you out of bed every single morning with that smile. And for me, it was hard to keep that smile through my injuries, but I started riding shifter carts and I started with go-karts, and I put almost all the money that I had made over, my X Games and Supercross, and I put it into car racing, and was able to get good enough that I eventually got sponsored by Subaru, and was able to kind of make a career out of that. And then Ken Block started. He was with DC Shoes, who was a sponsor, and he joined Subaru. And all of a sudden, it's in X Games. I'm getting to race my heroes like Colin McRae, and there was this opportunity to take a sport that I thought was not necessarily boring, but rallycross. There was no jumps. The racing was very, very race car, very normal. And to really build a sport where we had side by side jumps, jumping over other people, flying, literally 200 feet through the air, and found a sponsor in Red Bull that their whole motto is Red Bull gives you wings. And anything that they saw that flew, they wanted to support it. They wanted to be, sorry, my throat's a little hoarse right now. I actually just had surgery yesterday. So if I sound like I'm sick, I just had a, never mind, long story, but yes, got some rocks and debris taken out of my knee, and they had a tube down my throat. So sorry about the hoarseness, but
no, that's okay. I feel bad for making you do all this talking.
No.
Let me know how we can help.
No, sorry, you're good. But anyway, following your passion, we were able to take Nitro Circus and take all the sponsorship that I had from all this different knowledge and learning how to jump record jumps, and to do, the Evel Knievel tribute, and to do all this showmanship, and put on a sport where we could jump cars and use everything that I learned. And, we're starting now. COVID was tough last year because that was supposed to be our first full season. But really taking everything and trying to start a new sport in Nitro Rallycross that combines that entertainment and excitement from motocross and the jumping from Nitro Circus, and really just gives the drivers a challenge that we all wake up and we're passionate about.
It's very cool to be able to take that and cross it over and have so much fun. Is so cool. Look at this one.
So this is my 7-year-old daughter. And so we did a thing called Gymkhana. I'm sure most of you had probably heard of what Ken Block had started. And Ken Block, I want to talk a little bit about Ken. He's such an inspirational story. This guy, he loved snowboards, and he loved driving cars sideways, and he loved dirt bikes. And he was in college and started Drawers Clothing, and was able to sell that clothing company, but kept the logo and kept it as DC, and turned it into a shoe company with Danny Way's brother, who was the skateboarder who jumped the Great Wall of China. And he just wanted to drive. So when he sold DC Clothing, he had enough money to do kind of whatever he wanted to do. And that's all from hard work, and from understanding business, and from, being a straight A student, and from just being a really smart human being. He didn't have to rely on sponsorship. So he went and got the best driver coaches, and got the best cars, and got the best crews and the best mechanics. And when everyone said, hey, doing a video sliding a car around will never be successful, he said, it might not be, but you know what? It's going to be so much fun. And he went out and he started drifting there was the highest power Subaru all-wheel drive car that had ever been made. And he started something called Gymkhana, and he just started drifting around and challenging himself. And all of a sudden he's getting 100,000 views. The city of San Francisco reached out and asked if he would do a Gymkhana in San Francisco. They allowed him to shut down the Golden Gate Bridge, one of the biggest bridges in the United States, and do donuts on the bridge and race through the town and have so much fun. And he started this whole other company based on him just having fun. Now, all these top drivers were like, well, we're a better driver, or, well, why didn't we get the opportunity? And it's because Ken Block used what he learned in school and what he learned in business and his intelligence to go out, chase his dreams, have fun, and start something that no one had even thought of. So he was as he's got a little bit older, he said, look, you can come on. I want to see if someone else can take the reins of this franchise and see if it'll work with someone other than myself. And he said, I don't want you to do it too Nitro Circus. There can be some jumps, but you have to keep it kind of in the realm of what I've started. And what he started was awesome car, awesome location, and proximity driving, hanging tires almost off cliffs or getting really close to walls, stuff like that. So we did all of that, and we shut down my hometown of Annapolis, Maryland, with 1,000 horsepower all-wheel drive Subaru. I jumped over one of my best friends, who's a multiple-time world champion in offshore power boats, um, downtown Annapolis, and drifted all the way through it. And my daughter said, "Man, I really want to be a part of it." So she had just started driving this Can-Am. That's a 1,000 cc Can-Am. And I said, "Look, your mom's going to be a part of it, but she's a world champion." I said, "Your sister happened to be a part of it because she was doing donuts in the her little crazy cart, and they liked that enough to put in the credits." I said, "You're going to have to do something pretty cool." So my 7-year-old went, and she practiced every day. She drove her Can-Am for probably 2 hours, and we built this jump up bigger and bigger and bigger until she was jumping over basically the family car, going 50 miles an hour in her 1,000 cc Can-Am. And she worked on that and did it safely and built up to that. So, at 7, it's kind of scary to have my daughter, hitting a jump at 50 miles an hour going through the woods. But at the same time, you shouldn't let age be the factor in what tells you what you can and can't do, or anyone else. You know what you can do, and how you overcome fear is practice. Everyone says, "Well, how do you get the guts to do something?" But it's not really having guts. It's knowing all of the factors and being able to assess what's worth it for you. Risk to reward is always changing. It's different for a 15-year-old, that's at Loretta Lynn's in the B class saying, "I've got to get this sponsorship." It's different when you're, a top pro and you're the last lap of the last moto going for the championship. It's different when you're my age and you're old and you have injuries and you got a wife and 2 kids to look after. But at the end of the day, always know your limits. And I think one of the coolest parts about filming for the Slash Gymkhana was that a kid, Connor Stitt, 9 years old, we built this huge jump and he wanted to come jump it. And it had an airbag landing, but the airbag, it's still solid. Like, it's only 2 foot. So if you land upside down, you can still get really hurt. And Brandon Smith, who's a phenomenal X Games rider, he's a phenomenal World Games rider, second rider to ever do a quadruple backflip on a BMX bike. He was scared to hit this jump. And Connor Stitt looked at me, because Hubert always they call it the Pastrana Land chicane. We never get it right. It's always sideways. Something's always off at the house. And Connor Stitt looked at it and he goes, "I got this." And he became the youngest BMXer to ever do a double backflip over this huge jump. And he lands it, rides out of the airbag, hits another jump, and backflips over me driving the Can-Am crust. And it was really cool to work with someone so young that understood the risks. He understood the consequences. He went about it step by step, and he was able to execute the jump when it mattered. And I feel like you shouldn't allow someone to say that you can't do something because of your age, or that you should do something that you're not ready for. And really only what you're ready for. Same thing with injuries, with concussions, with all the other stuff. There's protocols in there, but what your body feels like. And those protocols are in there to make sure that you don't come back too soon, and always listen to the doctors. But at the end of the day, you can generally have a good feel of if you are ready or if you're not. Sometimes they're going to say you're ready when you're not. And sometimes they're going to say you're not ready when you are. And don't push it. Always make sure you take the time to come back healthy.
I hope you kids are taking notes. I am.
And I say that as I just had knee surgery yesterday, and I'm trying to get back on the motorcycle next week. So granted, there's sometimes you rush along, but at the end of the day, you got to know the consequences. So these are 2 really cool things. And the Motocross of Nations is, for me, the greatest honor in motorsport. It's the Olympics of motocross. And I had always looked up to Rick Johnson, to David Bailey, the Osho, Johnny O'Mara. I loved racing. I watched all of that. My coach was Gary Bailey. So he had always shown me all the videos of these just amazing riders. And, that was through the dominant era when nobody was touching the US riders. I mean, I think they won from 1982 all the way to 1996, undefeated. it was a cool time to be growing up as an American, and to watch these guys dominate. And we were off a couple year losing streak, and I'm 16 years old, had just come into the sport, and you had Steve Lampson, who was the obvious choice for the U.S. to go over, and he was so consistent and he was so good. But I was able to win the championship that year. I broke my thumb at the beginning of the Supercross season. Ended up, when I got the cast off, I won my first race at Daytona, and then broke my wrist, just that little scaphoid bone that's really annoying, and now my wrist is fused. So maybe not the best bone to keep riding through. If you happen to break that little bone that you feel like you can keep riding, you might want to listen to the doctors better than I did on that, because that being the maximum motion that I have is not ideal for future. But I went out and rode with the cast until Southwick, cut the cast off, which again wasn't the best decision. Won Southwick, ended up winning the championship that year by 2 points. On our off weekend, I went to X Games and broke the lunate, or not the lunate, I forget which little bone it was, but I broke a bone in my foot. Didn't tell Roger DeCosta or anybody. Had an extra brace kind of cast put in my Alpine Star boot. So I finished the year starting with basically having 3 different casts on as I was racing that year. Still had a broken foot when I had the opportunity to go over. Won the U.S. championship when I was 16, which until James Stewart came along, I was the youngest person to ever do that. And then I went over. Now, this was an interesting year because Roger DeCosta, the man, was his nickname. Anyone whose nickname is the man, you got to have a lot of respect for him. I was so lucky to have him as my mentor and the guy that really helped me along at Suzuki when I was first there, and still now actually on KTM. He's still just as dedicated and works so hard on getting these bikes dialed in. There in that picture, you see Ryan Hughes. He had been hurt all year. He was racing in Europe. He was not the first choice, but he begged Roger. He said, "Roger, I will not let America down. We have to win this year." And then, of course, the GOAT, Ricky Carmichael. I mean, he was the greatest that ever lived, and he was going to be on the team and the anchor. But we went out there and we did the qualifiers, and I won over the world champion Grant Langston. Ryan Hughes won, and then Carmichael won over the world champion as well. And we were in France, and Sebastian Tortelli and Stefan Roncada were definitely the favorites. But to jump over Stefan Roncada on a downhill, there was over 100,000 screaming, booing fans that were all throwing stuff at me that last lap. And that was the greatest feeling in the world, to have an entire nation. Basically, I needed security to walk out of there and not get killed. But at the same time, that felt like one of the most amazing things that I could do. And it was pretty cool to represent the United States. Since then, been able to go represent the U.S. in the Race of Champions, which is basically car driving's version of the Olympics. And I got to go over there. That's they call him Rowdy. Kyle Busch, maybe the greatest race car driver that's ever lived. I learned so much that week from him, even though that the Race of Champions is a race where you just jump in random cars, and it's not as I shouldn't say prestigious. It is, but it's more of a fun event because it's not in the perspective sports. It's not in NASCAR. It's not in F1. It's in, you're in Aston Martins or rally cars, or you got dune buggies and KTM crossbows, all these different vehicles. So a guy like Jimmy Johnson, who is a phenomenal worker, he's that guy he's at the shop every morning at 5:30 in the morning, and he's still there at 8 o'clock at night, because he's going over video review, and he's going over with his crew chief, and he's watching everything and figuring everything out. But when he gets to a track, a guy like a Scandinavian driver that's like a DTM driver, an F1 driver that has driven everything in snow and ice and dirt and pavement, those drivers generally do better. But Kyle Busch was there at 5 o'clock in the morning, talking to every single team with every different car, getting all the downloads on his phone. So he knew which cars had used tires, which cars had new tires, which cars had been out of alignment, which vehicles were slightly faster in practice than the other vehicles, because most of the races are won and lost by less than a half of a second. And it was amazing to have someone like Kyle to learn from, that just put so much time into winning. And people say, oh, you got lucky. In racing, you can get unlucky, but 99% of the people out there, they make their own luck. And that's something that's hard to believe. But when you work hard, when you put in the time, when you're in really great shape, when you've put in the time to dial in the motorcycle, to make sure that the suspension's set up and the motor works, and that you're, even if it's not the best. I know Robbie Raynard, maybe the fastest rider that's ever lived. He wasn't mentally as tough as a lot of the other riders, but he was faster on a practice bike. His beat up, flogged out bike that he had ridden all year, that was pretty much stock, than he was on his factory Suzuki. And what was cool about that was he just knew that bike inside and out. And Roger would actually have him bring his practice bike to the races. And I tell you, there was no one with a worse bike on the starting line than Robbie Raynard that year. And he went out there and podiumed a couple Supercross races. And there's something to be said about being comfortable. So sometimes you say, oh, it's the bike, I wish I had that bike. Shoot, through my amateur career, we could afford, if we're lucky, one bike a year. And my dad didn't put tires on until they were flat. So he was wondering why I got good starts at the beginning of the year and bad starts at the end of the year, because the tire was almost completely bald by the end of the year. But when the handlebars were bent, you rode it. When the clutch levers broke off, you just used the nub on the insides. And I kind of learned how to ride with anything. And that was, I think, what helped a lot when I went racing. I wasn't the best tester, but I could adapt. So that was pretty cool. Evel Knievel. So this was really interesting. Nitro Circus, we have a lot of opportunities, but we reach out a lot to different networks. So what's pretty cool is like networks like History, MTV, Discovery, they always reach out to media producers, content producers, even at this day and age, YouTubers. And they say, what do you have for us? These are the types of shows we're looking for. These are the types of shows that we think are finishing, that did well. What do you have? What can you create that fills these voids? So this History Channel came to us and said, look, we want to do a live stunt. We want to do something that can touch multiple age groups, that has some history to it. And we want it to reach the older audience and the younger audience. So we're sitting around the round table at Nitro and we said, this is a great opportunity. What if we can recreate some of Evel Knievel's jumps to show my dad's generation where the stuntman has gone, and that has gone into action sports. And that, my dad's always like, oh, back when men were men and bikes were crap. I was like, well, what if we can jump a bike that was just like what Evel jumped, and do it on the same ramps, do it on the same bike, and then, kind of in that story, show where the sport's gone and where these stuntmen have evolved to. So it was a really awesome opportunity for myself, not only to jump Caesar's Palace, which was absolutely awesome, and the fountain jump, because I'd always, seen the Knievels, but also to meet the Knievel family, to get their blessing, and to figure out, to go to Caesar's Palace and say, hey, can we jump the fountain? And talk to all these people, and to go into business meetings and realize that, we're going to need some buses. So we talked to Greyhound Bus, and we got a sponsorship from Greyhound, and they brought out their buses. And, a lot of times it's not about the stunt or what you're doing, but it's if you can sell it. So people are like, well, he's making more money, or he got a better ride. Well, you're only worth what you can add value to. So when Evel Knievel first wanted to jump Caesar's Palace, he was calling as a reporter every hotel in Las Vegas. And he said, hey, is it true that Evel Knievel is going to jump your parking lot? Hey, is it true Evel Knievel? So all of a sudden he built up this whole, every hotel is like, who is Evel Knievel? And why are all these news media outlets reaching out to us? He started his own hype train. And then when he called as himself, they had already been so excited to get Evil Knievel, that they dropped everything to pay him to do something they would have never, ever in their wildest dreams asked him to do. So kind of like the Ken Block, Evil Knievel created his own hype and created his own importance and was able to do what he loved to do based on his creativity. So this was a cool opportunity for Nitro Circus and us to really go in and say, okay, how can we get these companies excited? What can we do? And it ended up being the highest watched TV show on cable TV in 2 years ago, in 2007 or 2018. So for me, that was a huge win as a part owner in a company, as someone that was able to figure out how to sell a stunt, and then executing what I had always dreamed of doing since I was probably 4 years old. So that was a really just great opportunity, and to work with so many amazing people that like Roland Sands with the Indian motorcycle to make that and to reinforce the bike so it didn't break and so it lasted the whole time. And also to with all the guys that were building the ramps were absolutely amazing.
Very cool story. You did such a great job on this slideshow.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for helping with or doing all this. But so okay, so COVID hits, right? We have a live touring company. Now we can't do live tours. So what do we do? Said, okay, we have all these athletes that now aren't going to have a job. We have all these camera crews that have nothing to do. We have all these editors that have nothing to do. When we have sponsors that we promise content. So we said, okay, we have to work with small crews. We have to work with locations where they're far away from cities, and we can kind of really do what we have to do to meet all the protocols of COVID. So we talked to riders that already had tracks built. We said, okay, hey, Ryan Sipes, Smagical, myself, like, let's build some tracks and let's let's see if we can be within the whatever the state's protocols are. Let's go to these states that have a little bit more leniency, and everyone has to drive themselves there. Everyone has to, get their own hotels and to stay separate and to distance and to do everything we need to do to fit in within the walls. And let's try to make content. Everyone is pretty much stuck not being able to tour, not being able to do anything, but let's use this as an opportunity to do what we love to do. So we went out and we started pitching to networks like ESPN, who weren't able to do events like X Games. They're not able to do big events. They're not able to do stadium events. They need content. We can't do massive shoots that involve many people, but we can put GoPros on everybody's helmet and they can operate their own GoPros. So we can get some editors, that are some filmers, and we can create an event with 2 filmers, a bunch of GoPros, and maybe 8 to 15 people that are willing to drive themselves to have some fun. And what do you want to do? Oh, I want to learn a backflip. Oh, I want to do this. I want to cross over to this. Whatever it was, we tried to give the athletes the best opportunity that we could to help them make content. And we were able to get some shows that did absolutely phenomenal on ESPN2, Fox Sports 1, all these sporting networks that didn't have live sport to go to, and at the same time have so much fun doing it. So, every time I had a career-ending injury, I'd use it to learn how to, get that area stronger, and used it to figure out, how to drive something else or ride something else or work on something different. And that's where Nitro Circus started. Every time I was hurt, I would get in my, Bobcat or start shoveling and build jumps and then film them. And that's where Nitro Circus came from. And then, when you have an injury, maybe you can't ride dirt bikes, but maybe you can ride a go-kart. And that's where I started learning how to drive cars. So I think every time someone has something that goes really bad, they usually say, oh, well, that's it. But maybe it's just the beginning of something better. So for me, that was the biggest thing. And when COVID hit, yeah, it sucked. And it's still not, where we'd like to be with Nitro and touring, but we were able to do some really fun stuff. So I think the pit bike race was a good example of that. Straight rhythm. Usually when I get called out, I'm not very good at saying no to stuff. And I just thought it'd be so cool to run a 500cc motorcycle. And when Jeremy Willott from Red Bull said, "Hey, can you do straight rhythm?" I'm like, well, look, I'm not nearly as fast as Roxon and Villapoto and all these guys at the time that were kind of on top of the sport, but I'm pretty good at jumping and whoops. I mean, I'm not very good at turning, but if there's not going to be any turns and it's not that long, I don't have to be in that great of shape. I'm like, sure, I can do it, but I want to add excitement. Like, how can I come there and even if I don't make it past the first round, I'm like, you guys have to build a jump that I can backflip. And they said, okay, we'll build a jump. And then I'm like, can we have a whoop section towards the end so I at least have some kind of a chance? And Hanson and I split motos, and it was so much fun. Um, didn't make it through the first round, and then I was pretty much done. I was like, okay, that was cool. And Bowers comes out and he called me out. He's got the 500cc KX called the Unit, and that guy, I tell you, he's awesome. I've always looked up to him. He always raced a good friend of from down the road, Greg Duffy, who was a young kind of protege out of Maryland, the only rider to ever now do a double front flip on a motorcycle. And he had raced with Bowers, and I know Bowers from Arena Cross. And I was like, there's probably no way that I could race against Bowers, but I do have like the RMzilla is a much more modern bike. He's going to be on an older bike. Like maybe I'll be able to find a jump section that he's not doing. But Tyler, he's crazy. And there was a section that only Hanson and myself were doing, and Bowers jumped right through it. I mean, we out qualified Villapoto, which I thought was really cool. On 500s, he out qualified 3/4 of the field on a 1990 outdated piece of machinery on a supercross track. So he did really well, and he ended up. I won the first round, but he won the next two. So unfortunately, I did lose that one too. But brings us to another point. Like I've lost so many more races than I've won. But the only reason that I'm still around and still able to do what I love is because I'm not afraid to try. And whoever says you can't, it doesn't hurt to try, they're full of it, because it could definitely hurt to try. But know your limits. And I tell you what, if you guys want to do something, don't let fear of embarrassment or fear of losing get in your way, because the only way you can really fail is to not try. I mean, yeah, I wasn't very good at NASCAR, but you know what? It was pretty cool qualifying pole position for Talladega. I mean, I got to run a super speedway at 200 miles an hour. I was running third place, ended up with a car flipped off my hood, and I slammed into the wall at 200 miles an hour. It wasn't great. I got 10th place at Daytona, sliding backwards through the infield across the grass at about 180. And yeah, not ideal, but man, it makes for a cool picture. And I tell you what, I didn't regret a second of trying to figure out how to turn left. And it was a lot of fun. All right, so this is my backyard, and we use different ramps to figure out how to do wheelies, and actually use that same ramp to now backflip the Can-Ams. And what's really cool now with with the internet, people say, how can I get on a nitro circus, or how can I get a sponsor, or how can I get known? Look, if you're doing something that is better than anyone else in the world at whatever it is, you're going to get noticed. If you're doing a new trick, or you're making content, or even if you're not the best, but you're just have a good personality and you love what you do, it's amazing how many people follow passion. If you look at Huxton Deegan, he's not the best of that family is amazing at everything they do. But I follow Huck. I think he's awesome, man. He just has fun. He loves riding dirt bikes. He loves riding BMX, and that personality is kind of contagious. And guys like Edgar Tronteras, there could be 5 people in the stands, and he's still throwing the biggest whips. And if he crashes, he gets up and he's jumping in the air, and he's always pushing the limit. So I wanted to show you this. And what's interesting is, everyone says, oh, you're selling out or you're doing whatever. This is me getting to do what I love to do, and being able to build paradise in my backyard. And all I have to do to keep it going, to keep everything kind of afloat, not to make money, but to be able to have a Can-Am and to be able to, you know, pay for the fuel that it takes for the Bobcat to build ramps, is just go out there and do new and exciting things. And if I'm pushing myself and I'm challenging myself and we're smiling and we're having fun, people can relate to that. And then you can get sponsored to actually go continue having more fun. And it's a really tough to get there, and it's not easy. And everyone says, oh, well, you're lucky. And it takes a lot of hard work. It takes every single day figuring out how to get out there. The guys that are good on YouTube and the guys that you're probably watching, if you follow anyone on YouTube or any of that stuff, every single day they film, they come up with something unique, they film it, and they edit it, and they get it out every single day. That is so hard. Some days you're sick, some days you're tired, some days it snows all day. How are you going to come up with content if that's really what you want to do? I wouldn't wish YouTubing on anybody, but at the same time, you get to do more stuff and travel the world that maybe other people will never have the chance to. So if that's your passion, whatever your passion is, just put your heart and soul into it and you figure out a way to make it work. I wouldn't recommend base jumping. It's kind of pass or fail on the live or die spectrum, but man, it's a good time. It's the only sport that when you step off a cliff, you're automatically going as fast as the best base jumper in the world. Gravity will get you. But I looked up to a lot of guys in skydiving and base jumping, and became really good friends with a lot of people that aren't around anymore. And right now, the Roners, one of my best friends, Eric Roner, his family's out here, and Oscar and Casper, they're riding dirt bikes, and they're living like Roner, and they're awesome. Such an awesome family. So seeing these base jump photos reminds me of always my safety guy was Eric, and we're able to do some amazing things and travel to some amazing places and jump off some really cool antennas and cliffs and buildings, and not all of it legal. Wouldn't recommend it, but it was quite a rush. But what was cool about that was the stuff that was legal. We were able to film and really make some cool content. And that was kind of how Nitro Circus started. Like, what can we do that's super fun, where we can push the limits? So we traveled around, and in between going to the top picture, Slane Castle, where Red Bull X Fighters always did, Madrid in the bullfighting arena, or over the castle, in all these really cool locations. But when people would normally just go in and go out, we would go in and see what other cool things we could do while we were there. And usually you have, a sponsor or someone that's helping you get to these places, and they're hoping that you make more content. So if you can go out and you can find a cliff in Ladderbruden, I wouldn't recommend base jumping again, not the safest sport. But we found some cliffs, and we took a train to the top, and we spent the time with their families, and then we just jump off the cliff, and we'd meet the families back down at the bottom of the tour bus, and we'd keep going on to the next location. And I tell you, living on tour it's tough. You're hurt, you're sick, you're tired. When one person gets sick, everybody gets sick. And when half the crew is hurt, sometimes it's your turn to step up and do something that's a little scary and probably outside of your comfort zone, but you work as a family, and that's what's really cool. And I learned a lot from my dad, who was in the military, that you got to be able to trust the people around you with your life. And what's really cool is when you're going over the final trains and you've got a snowmobile in front of you and a four-wheeler behind you and two dirt bikes on either side. If anyone isn't on point, if anyone stayed up too late the night before, or is hurt or sick or tired and doesn't tell you and can't perform to that level, they endanger everybody. So it's everyone's trust in the people around them to always know their limits and to show up as healthy and as strong as they can every day. And no matter how tired you are, every morning to be there, that first person signing autographs, and the last person to leave. guys like R. Willie, you can give scooter riders a hard time, but he's there every morning, first one. He gives out scooters every single show, and he's there until 1 a.m. until the bus leaves every single time, signing autographs, talking to the fans. And that's what it takes. It's so much more than just being the best of your sport. It's not only being the best or being the best you can be, but being the one that the fans want to see and they want to be a part of. And, if you want to make a living doing what you love, such a small part of it is what you actually see. The rest of it is work. But every day you get to do what you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life.
I love it. Amazing story. When your 7-year-old was in that cam, I couldn't even see her head.
We had a child seat elevated a little bit, and our buddy welded come over Steve. It was a rain day, so he couldn't weld the ramp, so he welded the foot pegs up a little higher. So again, not the best idea, but she's only hit one tree, so she's doing pretty good.
Awesome. My husband's over here dying to show you the poster he created of you that you might remember.
Yes. Dude, that's awesome. It's been a while. Shoei was my first sponsor. My mom wrote out, and I had a handwritten note. I was 7 years old, and we got a free helmet. And my mom's like, they must have misread your resume. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway, the story was great, and we've got to get to the kids because they're waiting. So we did a challenge, and we asked kids to send in a little video and have an opportunity to ask questions. And we've got 2 of them that Shelby's going to introduce, and then we're going to see how much time we have left. And of course, save any questions in the chat and see if we can't send them to you later. So take it away, Shelby.
All right, so first up, we have Maverick Snyder.
Hello.
What's up, Maverick?
Hi. My question is, will you send me an invite to come hang out at your house sometime?
You got to be careful what you ask for, because sometimes your dreams end up being your nightmares. Everyone, they get to Pastrana Land, they're like, these ramps are so much bigger than they look on TV. But yeah, what do you ride?
65 and 85.
Nice. You do any backflips on the trampoline or diving boards?
Yeah.
Would you want to try something in the foam pit?
Yeah.
All right. Well, careful what you ask for. Maybe we'll get in touch after this. And where do you live?
Indiana.
Indiana. Actually, I might be riding a GNCC up there. Do you ride any GNCC events or just motocross?
Just motocross.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I'll be in touch. We'll see. The problem is I'm usually only home if I'm broken or filming something. So there's never just a time where it's just one person for sure. But if you're willing to drive out and come maybe watch some of the shenanigans, we can definitely make that happen.
All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Maverick. Thanks, Travis. Shelby, who's up next?
All right, so up next we have Sage Tangler.
Come on, Sage.
Hello. Let me grab up my question real quick because I wrote it down. My question is, how did you prepare for a animal? Wait, never mind. My second question is, how did you get over your fear before you went out for a big race?
You'll never be over your fear. The hard part is channeling that into something that makes you stronger. That fight or flight when you're so nervous, but you're kind of stronger actually for it. One of the things that I think is really interesting, I started, when I turned pro, I started working with a trainer, and they'd actually get your heart rate, which sounds silly, especially before like a long race, but get your heart rate up to 160, 170, like almost maximum. And when you get a little bit tired and get your blood flow, it helps take a lot of that initial emotion down and helps your first lap be a lot smoother and a lot less chaotic. So I guess two things: practice, preparation, and a good warm up.
Thank you.
Great question, Shelby. Sage. I'd like to call on Augusta, one of our coaches. I know that you might know her son, Banks, right? So she's got a great question.
Yeah.
Augusta, why don't you go for it?
Hi, Travis. Thank you for being an inspiration and this generation's role model like Evel Knievel was. But my question is, after all this time, how do you maintain such an upbeat, positive personality and you make everybody feel so special?
Well, your son is very special to start off. He's so much fun and he brings so much energy. It's been really cool hanging with him for sure. But at the end of the day, I love what I do. And, I watched how hard my mom and my dad work to allow me to ride dirt bikes. And yeah, if I end up construction with my dad or my mom's a school teacher in inner city Baltimore for English as a second language. And, they love what they do. But every day that I come back and complain, my dad's like, hey, grab a shovel, grab a jackhammer, let's go. Like, they'll forget about you in a year or two. And that's the sad truth, is that you only have the opportunity to do what you're passionate enough to do. And at the end of the day, I want to be a motorcycle rider. I want to ride Can-Ams, and I want to be around other people that are passionate. People like your son, who comes out and it could be raining, it could be cold, it could be whatever. And he's like, let's go ride. I'm like, here we go.
Thank you. He's been following you all his life and you've made his dreams come true.
Cool. Well, thank you for helping him along the path, for sure.
That is an inspiring story, because Banks was our valedictorian 2 years ago and
Awesome.
Graduated from On Track too. So I love it. Love hearing that and seeing the connection. We have a couple more minutes. Shelby, is there a question that is just begging to be asked, has to be different than anything that we've talked about?
Let's see. So we have Cameron Rowell. He
Okay,
has a question for
Cameron.
you.
Cameron, you can unmute and ask your question. We can see you, Cameron, but we can't hear you.
I can see it comes up. What accomplishment are you most proud of?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, thank you. Good question, Cameron. It was, racing was awesome, but it's the journey as you figure out that's almost better. Like, what I remember more than, the national championships were kind of the way you got there and the friendships you made along the way. And now it's to be able to tour the world with my wife, with my kids, and with my best friends in Nitro Circus. I feel like even though Motocross the Nations might have been what meant the most as far as representing, the U.S. and being able to win that at 16 was awesome. I feel like at the end of the day, just to be able to make a living still at this age doing what I love with the people that I love is probably the biggest accomplishment that I could have.
I love that. It's a great answer, because our goals change, our accomplishments change over the years. And so to be able to do that, that's outstanding. Well, I just thought that this was so fun, and your enthusiasm and everything that you do is so inspiring to all of us. I want to thank you so much. And I know your time is valuable and you've got family there that you need to go be with, and you got to rest your voice. I hope everything
I'm
went.
sorry.
It's okay. I hope everything went smooth for you and in your surgery yesterday. And this just means the world to us. So what we end up doing is this goes out on our website, and everybody gets to enjoy it. And so it's a win-win, right?
Yeah, talked to a lot of people that have done the On Track school program. You guys seem to do an amazing job, and I know Robert DeFrancisco is in the program now, and talked to Ashley Filer, well, texted with Ashley Filer. So you guys are definitely doing something very special, and good luck to you.
Well, thank you so much. You know, we have that in common where we understand this sport and we're a community. I think this sport is such a family, right? And yeah, we just bring that. We're trying to make school cool, so you're helping us do that.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate taking the time out of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Kiana and Shelby. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you, Travis.
Yep. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Kiana. I appreciate it, Shelby.
Thank you.